Recently, I had an experience with credit card fraud that caused so much unnecessary stress and anxiety. I spent hours on the phone and in chats with my credit card company. I had to get two different cards before the fraud stopped, and I was so worried about what was going to happen to my money in my bank account. And I sometimes have the fear that it's going to happen again, right? And that's why I'm so excited to introduce You Are the Healer's newest sponsor, Aura, an app for protecting online data and personal information. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it protects me from hackers who could use this information to help them access things like my social media accounts, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. Protecting yourself and your personal information is a form of self-care. I swear. Go to my sponsor, aura.com/healer to get a 14-day free trial and have peace of mind knowing your information is safe. Again, that's aura, aura.com/healer for your 2-week free trial. You Are the Healer is sponsored by BetterHelp. Therapy is mandatory because there's absolutely nothing wrong with seeking help. I think every person who walks this earth needs therapy, honestly. I'm stoked to be connected with BetterHelp to offer affordable and accessible therapy resources. The link is in my show notes, and you can also go to betterhelp.com/healer. That's better, HELP.com/healer. Now let's get into this episode. Hey, welcome back to You Are the Healer. My name is Sydney Rinderknecht, and I'm your host. And You Are the Healer is a mental health education and motivation podcast where I use my experience in my own life and through my experience as a psych nurse to help you help yourselves and to help you realize that you are your own greatest healer. So I'm super stoked for today's episode. This one has been on the mind for a while. We're talking about how to feel your feelings. I absolutely had to do the episode on feeling your feelings in the season of Metamorphosis because metamorphosis, I'll remind you the definition, is a complete change of form, structure, or substance as transformation by magic or witchcraft. And I just think that feeling your feelings is where you can take a form that you have in this lower vibrational state and completely change it with like the magic of being alive and expand and learn, and you can go from being reactive and dismissive and using coping skills that are not helpful, and then you can completely transform into someone that uses their emotions as a power, that uses it with their wisdom to make the best decisions, to communicate better, to really just be the best version of themselves. So we're feeling our feelings in the season of metamorphosis. Let's get into it. I so badly wish that it was standardized education for literally like elementary schoolers to learn about their emotions, because we are all human. We all have emotions. And for some reason, our culture, our society just pretends like that's not the case. And so that's what I'm here to do, is to educate you on how to feel your feelings. We'll talk about why it's important and how to do it. And I'll tell stories along the way. So let's just get right into it. So why is it important to feel your feelings? I like to think of emotions as like your sixth sense. So your emotions and your feelings it's like a physical state in your body that just gives you information. It gives you insight into your life. It's like intuitive wisdom that the mind can't, it doesn't live in the mind, it lives in the body. And it's this soul communication that you have. And it can really be a strength. We can look at our emotions as information to our lives. And so, for instance, like I used to get this utter feeling of dread before getting out of bed to go to work at my old job. And for context, my old job was like the most toxic, unsafe environment that I had ever worked in. And so I used to think that there was something wrong with me for not being excited to go to work, when this emotion, this feeling of dread, was giving me very, very valuable information that there was something wrong in my work environment. There was something in my life that wasn't in alignment with what my being, my intuitive self knows. And so that emotion clued me in to eventually end up leaving that job. So emotions, I like to think it's like your guidance system. They help you stay on track in alignment. And if you spend your whole life pressing them down and ignoring them, then you're going to end up in a completely different spot than what the universe, God, whoever has in store for you, because your emotions are telling you something. And I like to think of it like we need to honor them, we need to listen to them, even though we are so not taught that. So I do want to take a minute and explain or address that a lot of people were likely shamed for their emotions growing up. It's newer that mental health is becoming like more accepted and addressed in our society. But for a lot of people, I'm thinking of like men in specific, they were taught that the only emotion that is safe to express is anger. And so no wonder why that lesson has been passed down through generations. And so if you were a kid and you were crying and your parents told you to suck it up and you're overreacting, like that is rooted in how our society has worked up until this point. The majority of humans are not taught how to feel their feelings, how to manage their emotional experience. And so, what that ends up being is we typically bottle things up. If you're not taught how to healthily feel emotions as they come, then it's going to keep building and building and building until it's so intolerable that something has to give, that you explode on people, you're super reactive. So, it's important to feel our feelings because bottling it up does so much harm. And it might not do it right away, it might take, years of this emotion building. But I mean, I can think of a number of times when people who were not processing or handling their emotions, it got to a certain point and they just lashed out and they were not the best version of themselves because at a certain point, like all these emotions bottled up inside of you just becomes utterly unbearable. And so a lot of times people will push them down, pretend like it doesn't happen, and then it ends up harm is done. A lot of times people avoid their emotions because emotions aren't inherently like fun to feel sometimes. We avoid them for a reason, okay? Sometimes things like depression, anxiety, fear, guilt, grief, all of these things are really difficult. And so in that moment, in that short-term moment, avoiding it is easier and it feels better. So a lot of times people use things like substances, um, sex, relationships as a distraction. They use TV, like not thinking about anything and just mind numbing themselves out. Even things like achieving a lot can be a strategy to avoid feeling your emotions because if you're always having these external validations and I was, the head of my class and I did all these things, you're avoiding those negative feelings that you're running from. And I mean, there's a million ways to avoid and distract ourselves from our feelings. I don't know if anyone's ever seen the Vampire Diaries, but if you have, you know that the vampires have the ability to turn off their emotions. They can literally just like turn them off and then not feel anything. And usually they're a lot more savage and ruthless when they do this. And on one hand, like I so badly wish that I could have that ability because I think I would become, this is my like random train of thought, but I think it would be very powerful if I could just turn off my emotions. I'd be all logic and everything would be perfect. But unfortunately, like humans don't have that choice. And so feeling your feelings and having emotions, that is like an inevitable part of the human experience. And so we're here to learn how to navigate that and how to be our best selves and deal with the hands we were dealt because we can't just flip the switch and turn our emotions off. Okay, they're a part of life. Before we go into the step by step how to feel our feelings, I want to keep emphasizing why it's important. Because if you're someone that's adverse to feeling your feelings, if you typically run and do anything you can to avoid it, you might have a hard time wanting this information, wanting to feel something difficult. I mean, you think of things like heartache and grief, those feelings are so intense. It's like, why the hell would I want to feel that? And I just want to emphasize this before we get into it, because maybe there's people that are kind of on the fence, right? You don't really necessarily want to, but you know it's probably important. And so there's so many benefits of feeling our feelings and not bottling it up, right? So that bottling it up, not only do we lash out on people and we have these huge reactive episodes, but bottling up your emotions can lead to a bunch of physical health symptoms. I know in my personal life, I used to have daily headaches, IBS, cystic acne, and I think a lot of those were contributed to repressing things that I was not yet ready to feel. And that memory had to go somewhere. And so it stored itself in my physical body, which was very, very uncomfortable. And so if you need some motivation to start to feel and process your emotions, those physical symptoms, I mean, there's chronic diseases, there's tons of things that your body will do to store that feeling if you don't process it. And so that can be very, very uncomfortable. So if you don't want that uncomfortability, feel your feelings. We'll get into it. More benefits as to why we should feel our feelings. Our emotions give us invaluable information about ourselves. Our emotions clue us into our values, our desires, the things that we need. And our emotions can be a guidance system so that we know ourselves and that we can live in the most aligned, happiest, healthiest version of ourselves. Understanding our own emotions and our own emotional experience also helps us understand others and empathize with others, which leads to more connection. And there's tons of data that connection contributes to decreased mental health symptoms. And so when you're able to be with yourself, then you are able to be with other people and share that space and have that true connection, which really matters on this earth, is feeling like you are with somebody, that you are together, that you have this shared common human experience, which our emotions are some of those shared common human experiences. I mean, our emotions can help unify all of us. People might speak different languages, they might be different ages, they might be from entire different generations, but we all know what sadness feels like. We all know what it's like to be jealous, to be angry. And our emotions can help bring people together, and they can really be a strength. That's something that I really want to emphasize in this video, in this podcast, is our emotions can be this inner wisdom, this inner guidance, this thing that is helpful and not harmful. I think we just weren't taught anything about it, and emotions can feel so uncomfortable that we think they must be harming us. But our emotions are a strength. We can use it. They're information that we can hack into. Okay, it's so important. Some more benefits as to feeling your feelings. When you start to feel your feelings, you are going to be less reactive. You're going to be able to regulate your emotions. So something that might have sent you into a huge spiral might just send you into a couple minutes of feeling your feelings, and then you don't have that big reaction. You don't have that huge meltdown anymore. Feeling your feelings means you'll end up being more resilient, because if you're bottling it up, you're going to explode. Whereas if you slowly feel your feelings as they come up, you're likely more able to handle anything that life throws at you. Feeling your feelings can also lead to really awesome creative expression and inspiration. I know that a lot of times when I'm really super moved to write or to record or to sing or do art, it's because I'm in the thick of an emotion. And our emotions can lead to, I mean, some of the best artwork of all time. And that's a resource, that's a benefit that our emotions have. I think of so much music would have never been written without emotions. So many paintings would have never even been a thought if people haven't experienced that intensity of that emotion. And so if you're someone that experiences emotions more intensely than other people do, if you're a highly sensitive person, I know I am, it can be really easy to see your intense experience of emotions as a weakness. It can be so easy to wish away your sensitivity and to say, man, I just wish things didn't affect me as much. But there is strength in feeling these things deeply. You can take that and it can be a catalyst. You have all this extra information. It's like one of your senses is more heightened than the others. That is a superpower, as long as we learn how to manage it. Because, yes, if you feel things really intensely and you have no coping skills and you're terrified of feeling anything, of course it's going to feel like a burden. But you have the tools to shape your life. So if you feel things deeply and you learn how to manage your emotions and you learn how to regulate, you have a superpower on your hands. I just want to remind everybody of that. Okay. If you feel your feelings more, you're going to have better relationships in your life. You're going to be able to handle conflict better. You're going to be able to communicate better, and you're going to be better at decision making because your emotions are cueing you in. They're helping you out with decision making. And with things like burnout, you're going to be able to recognize, okay, I'm feeling really stressed at work, I'm feeling really burnt out in my life, and you're able to feel your feelings before it gets to this big breaking point of burnout. Something that's imperative to know about emotions is the three N's. So emotions are normal, emotions are natural, and emotions are not harmful. If any of my coworkers are listening, you're probably chuckling because we teach this to the kids at work. But everybody has emotions. Okay, they're normal. There's nothing wrong with you for experiencing an emotion. It is a part of the human experience. Emotions are natural. They are an inevitable part of life, okay? And the third one, this is one I want to focus on a little bit more, is emotions are not harmful. If someone would have told me this as a teenager, I would have been literally unstoppable. So I think sometimes people can get a little confused on this. Emotions are not harmful because they're like, well, when I get angry, I punch people. And when I get sad, I self harm. And it's important to separate the emotion from the emotional behavior. Okay, so the emotion itself, the sadness, is not going to kill you. Okay, if you choose to act on the behavior your emotion makes you want to do, that's different. Okay, I'm very aware that there is danger in mental health. I freaking work in it. Okay, but the emotion itself, the feeling in your body, isn't going to do anything to you. Feeling anger in your body isn't going to hurt you. Feeling anxious isn't going to hurt you. Now, if every time you're anxious, you drink a bottle of vodka, that emotional behavior might get you into some trouble. Okay. So emotions are not harmful. I wish I knew this as a child. Oh my gosh. Your emotions are normal, natural, not harmful. Okay, so I feel like that's imperative to know before we get into the how to feel our feelings. The first thing you want to do when you are going to feel your feelings is you want to get grounded. You don't want to be in a chaotic environment. You want to be in a place where you feel safe, where you feel emotionally safe. So that could be in your car, like not driving, obviously. Like I think a lot of people feel safe, like parked in their car. That could be in your room, okay, maybe outside in nature, but you want to do whatever you need to do to get grounded, okay? So, really slowing down from everything. I think this life is so hectic and so chaotic. We're going to get grounded. You're going to unplug from your phone. You're going to turn off any noise if that's overwhelming to you. And really just slow down. Take some deep breaths, okay? Check in with your body. Do like a little body scan, and we're just going to get grounded in the moment because if you're in a really intense emotional state, you might feel completely overwhelmed and have no idea what's going on. So, getting grounded is going to help us get to the next step of identifying our emotions, which I feel like I could do a literal entire book about. If you've read Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown, that is like one of the best books of all time, in my opinion, because it's like a emotional dictionary. It goes through and it identifies all of the emotions. And the problem with mental health now, one of them, is that our emotional language is not standardized. So a lot of times people will use words that are similar, but are different emotional experiences. And so that book is really great because it goes through every emotion and defines it and really just gets into it. I love it. It's a great coffee table book. I'll put it in the show notes if you want to get it, but it's awesome. And so a big part of that is we need the language to identify our emotions. If we only know happy, mad, sad, joy, that's going to be hard to identify our emotions. And so, a great tool for this, and I'm going to sound like such a freaking therapist, but is the emotions wheel. I will also link one in the show notes. You can also just Google emotions wheel and it should pop up. But if you are in the thick of an emotion, it can be hard to get specific on what you're feeling because all you know is I'm just so angry. I can't think about anything else. So the emotion wheel in the middle, it starts with those basic emotions, happy, mad, sad, joy. There might be another one or two in there. And then it goes into more specific ones on the outside. So, okay, I know I'm mad. And then it goes into a bunch of different things. Are you enraged? Are you irritated? Are you annoyed? And when you're feeling your feelings, when you identify them, you want to get as specific as possible. You want to find the emotion you're feeling because let's say I'm someone who I experience sadness, I feel like more than anything else. And so once you get specific with identifying the emotion, it's easier to manage because you know what you're dealing with. And so if I were to say, "Oh, I'm feeling sad," it's like, "Well, what do I need to do? You know, how do I feel this sadness?" Whereas if you have a more specific term for sadness, right? I feel a lot of disappointment. And so that's where a lot of my sadness comes from. That disappointment cues me in that I'm feeling sad because of expectations that were unmet, or I'm feeling disappointed because I really cared about the outcome of something and it didn't work out that way. And so that is more information. So that way you can learn as much as you can from the emotional experience and also know exactly why you're feeling that way and what are some things that contributed to it, which can be very, very valuable information. So, we're going to get grounded, we're going to regulate our nervous system, we're going to ask ourselves, what am I feeling? And we're going to sit with ourselves and you're going to get specific. So instead of saying sad, you're going to get to the root and you're going to say, I'm disappointed or I'm irritated, or you're going to get as specific as possible so then you know what you're dealing with. Because if you can't identify your emotion, how are you going to feel it? How are you going to process it? How are you going to integrate it? You can't. So that's why identifying your emotions is such a key part in feeling your feelings. So we're going to get specific about feeling our emotions, maybe use the emotions wheel, literally no shame. we have emotion wheel shirts at work, and I constantly, anytime someone's wearing it, I look around the emotions wheel. I'm like, man, what am I feeling right now? And I swear there's words on that emotions wheel that I'm like, I don't even really know what that means, or I've never even heard that word before. So it can be a great resource, even if you're a freaking mental health professional. Okay, there's no shame in using the emotions wheel. A huge other factor I want to talk about with feeling our feelings is it is essential to have a non-judgmental mindset when it comes to feeling your feelings, because with emotions, I think a lot of us are conditioned to judge ourselves and to judge others. And if you're feeling your feelings, it's so important that you are a safe space for yourself, that you are not judging yourself, because it is literally one of the easiest things in the world to do, to judge yourself for having an emotion. I shouldn't be so sad. Why am I even angry? I don't even have a reason to be angry. Okay. And that's going to do the opposite of what feeling your feelings does. Okay. So, as best as you can, just really try to be aware of, am I judging myself? And drop that and just accept it. Okay, emotions are normal. There's nothing wrong with you for having an emotional experience. And if you feel the emotion, it's going to pass. Okay, you're not going to be stuck in this grief or this jealousy or whatever it is forever. So it's really important to not judge yourself. So, from a non judgmental place, we are simply going to sit with our emotions. And that can feel really uncomfortable at first, but the more that you do it, the easier it's going to get. And you're literally just going to close your eyes. You're in a grounded place and you're just going to sit with that feeling. And you've identified it, so you can sit with, I feel so irritated right now. And you're just going to sit there in a mindfulness moment and you're just going to notice. And you can get curious. Okay, you can ask yourself, how does this feel in my body? And that's a great way to cue yourself into your emotions, is your physical body. That honestly is usually my number one giveaway, is how do I feel in my body? If I'm feeling anxious, I'll start to get nauseous. If I'm feeling sad, I'll get that lump in my throat. And that usually cues me into feeling the emotion. Like, I usually, before I'm aware of my physical body, I'm not even aware that I'm having an emotion. So asking yourself, okay, where do I feel this in my body? A lot of times we feel anger as like this warmth, this clenching of our fists, clenching of our jaw. A lot of times we feel anxiety as this racing in your heart, this tight chest, nausea, stomach pain, headaches. So our emotions typically show up differently in our body for each emotion. And so checking in with your physical body is a great way to start to feel your feelings. And you're going to get curious. You're going to ask yourself, okay, what thoughts am I thinking with this emotion? And I want to say that this is after you've done a couple steps. Okay, we're not starting with, oh, why am I feeling this way? That's not the curiosity I'm talking about. I'm talking about the curiosity as to being non-judgmental and open and genuinely inquisitive about your experience, because I think a lot of us, myself included, can tend to intellectualize our experience, and before we've even processed and felt an emotion, we're like, well, why am I feeling this way? What's the root of it? And we're trying to analyze ourselves. We are emotional creatures. Yes, we have brains, we can use our logic, we can use our minds, but we also have this emotional guidance system. And so before you crack the code as to why am I feeling this way, let me get to the root of it. You have to stop and feel your feelings first, which I know that's very difficult for me, especially because I feel like my mind is always going and I'm like, I want to figure it out right now. Pausing, getting grounded, sitting with yourself, identifying what you're feeling, all of that has to happen before, because if not, that emotion is just going to keep coming up. If you don't sit with it, if you don't give that emotion its airtime, it's likely just going to keep happening again. No amount of psychoanalysis of yourself or other people is going to prevent that from happening. You have to sit with it. And I know that it's uncomfortable and I know that it's like not fun, but it's important, because if you don't, then all those things that we talked about earlier are going to happen. You're going to get those disease-like symptoms of headaches and stomach aches and chronic illnesses. You're going to pop off on people. You're going to be disrespectful. You're going to be reactive, and we don't want that. So I actually have had a coworker say this about emotions, which has always stuck with me, and it's so freaking funny. She says, feeling your feelings is like holding in a fart. Bear with me. She said, if you have to fart and you hold it in, hold it in, hold it in, you're going to get crazy stomach pain. You're going to feel irritable. You're not going to want to be around people. And worst case scenario, you literally might have a code brown. You might have an emergency because you're holding it all in. Whereas if you let out the fart little by little, in little tuffs as it comes up, you're not going to have that stomach pain. You're not going to have that anxiety of, oh my gosh, is this going to be an emergency? And I just thought that that was a really funny way. The kids were super receptive to it at work, so I just thought it was really funny because it kind of takes the seriousness out of it. It's like, no, why would you hold in the fart to where you're so uncomfortable when you could just let it out little by little and it's easier to manage the entire time. I just think sometimes it's really scary for us with our emotions to feel them, especially those really, really uncomfortable ones, right? And I really want to emphasize like it's okay if it's hard to feel your emotions. There is a reason that people avoid it. There's a reason why people bottle it up, okay? If it was easy, everyone would be feeling their feelings all the time. No one's taught it and it's difficult. So if you are in a place where you have been bottling things up, where you have been defensive and coping in whatever way you can, that is okay. Okay, we are human and you are doing your best, and at any point you have all the tools needed to change that narrative. You have the ability to start to heal, to start to feel your emotions, to change your patterns. Okay, you have the key. Okay. Anyways, I always get on a tangent on that every episode. I'm like, you are the healer, but it's so true. Okay, no one else can do it for you. You have everything needed. Okay, so we've sat with our emotions. We're getting curious. We're asking ourselves, how does it feel in my body? How does it show up? What thoughts are paired with it? Because sometimes the thoughts can drive the emotions even further. Or maybe it's a memory that you're thinking of that is paired with this emotion. And that's helpful information to have. Okay. And then once you've identified it and you sat with your emotion, we're going to express it. Okay. And this can look different for everybody. And this is part of why I think emotions are superpowers, because like expressing your emotions is so cool and powerful and like connects us all as humans. So expressing your emotions can look like being creative. Okay, this is what I was talking about: writing music, doing art, dancing. I mean, any form of creativity, right? You can use that as a means to express your emotions. Okay, I know when I'm sad, I love to write poetry. There is no better time for me to write poetry than when I'm sad, because I'm expressing my feelings, I'm getting it out. Even if no one reads it, it's like, oh, okay, it's out of my body and it's somewhere else now. Another way you can express your emotions is to journal. I mean, this is like my bread and butter, baby. I love to journal. Journaling is the best way for me to feel my feelings. It's like I get it out and it's not so big of a deal after I journal. I can understand it better. It's processed, it's moved through me. Journaling, I won't say too much more. I just really, really recommend it. Okay. Another thing you can do to express your emotions is talking it out. This can be talking to a friend, a family member, a therapist, a coach, counselor, psychiatrist, your coworker. Talk out your emotions. If you don't express them, they live in you and they're not meant to. They're meant to pass through you. Okay? And so we're going to express our emotions in however you like to do it. The next thing we're going to do is to release our emotions. So expressing it is kind of when we're still in it, when we're that emotion's driving us. I like to think of emotions as like energy. So when I'm in an emotional state, I have a lot of energy, and expressing it is getting that out, dancing, talking, journaling, whatever. And then releasing it is more of that cathartic, letting it go. Okay. So when I think of releasing emotions, I think of exercising. Okay. If you have that mad anger in you, go do a CrossFit workout and just crush it, and just get that out of your system. You can also, I mean, tons of exercise are really helpful. I love swimming. Yoga can be really good for especially anxiety because it's that mindfulness meditation moment kind of thing. And so that can be a really good way to release an emotion. A lot of times we trap emotions in our bodies too. And so exercise and any form of movement can be a great way to release it and kind of complete that stress cycle. Another great way to complete the stress cycle by releasing emotions is to cry. I wish so badly that no one was told that crying is bad, because crying is a literal, like, physiological reaction our body does on purpose to clear an emotion, to release it from our body. Okay. And so crying is normal. Crying is helpful. If you're crying all day, every day, that's a different story. I don't think a lot of people are in that boat. So it is okay to cry. There's nothing wrong with crying. And you can cry when you're happy. And that helps you feel that happiness. You can cry when you're absolutely devastated. And it helps release it from your body. Okay. There's nothing wrong with crying. It is a skill to have in your toolkit. That's my soapbox. um, Another great way to release your emotions is things like breath work and meditation. And I also just want to say that you can have things on these, you can have ways to express your emotions and release them that I haven't listed. Okay, these are just some ideas. And then I really like to think whenever I have a big emotional experience, once I've felt it and processed it, so I've released it, right? I've journaled, I've showered, just done something to clear it from my body. I always like to ask, what is this emotion trying to teach me? Because our emotions are our guidance system. They're pointing you in some type of direction. Okay. So I always like to ask, what is this trying to teach me? And it can be that I don't like being disrespected. I really don't like my job. And maybe you need to change your career path, and that's okay. Okay. Your emotions are helping you understand yourself. And so when you ask yourself, what is my emotion trying to teach me? There is so many things you can learn about yourself. Whereas if you're just stuffing it down, you're pretending like you don't feel anything, you are missing out on that valuable information that you can use to better your life. So once you've felt it, think of the karmic lesson. Think of what is being taught through this. What information do you now have? What did you learn? And I want to say that this trying to figure out what it's teaching you happens after you feel it. If you are trying to figure out what this emotion is teaching you as you're sobbing because you're so sad, it's not going to be effective. The sadness hasn't been felt yet. Okay. When you're done, when you've released it, when you're no longer in that intensity of the emotion, that's when you can really learn from it. And I want to end with self compassion. Self compassion is so important when it comes to feeling your feelings. It goes along with that non judgment. But think of, how would you treat a friend who just had a really intense emotional experience? You would be so nice and nurturing and kind and tell them it's okay, take your time, there's nothing wrong with you. And that is how we can treat ourselves too. We can be compassionate to ourselves. I think, especially after an intense emotion, is when we need it the most. And you can be your own best friend. You can talk to yourself in a way that's nice and safe and welcoming and inviting, because emotional safety starts with you. If you foster a safe place inside of yourself to have an emotional experience, then you can go ahead and share that with other people. But if you are judging your emotions, you are going to judge other people's emotions. And it's not going to be a safe place. You're not going to fully feel your feelings because you're judging yourself. You're being harsh on yourself. I mean, I know I've done this so many times, but like invalidating your emotions and being like, oh, I have no reason to be this upset, right? So I really want to emphasize self-compassion is like one of the true keys to feeling our feelings, because first of all, there's nothing wrong with you for having an emotion. Okay, everybody has them. You likely have the emotion for a reason. It's trying to tell you something. Okay, so please, please, please be nice to yourself when you're experiencing something. A lot of times we feel emotions when difficult things have happened. And that's when we need self compassion more than anything else, is when we're unwell, when things have happened to us. And so, I really, when you guys are practicing feeling your feelings, I just want you to be so nice to yourselves and extend the love that you give to everybody else to yourself. Okay. Because the more that you foster that love inside yourself, the more you have to give to the world and to everybody else. Okay. It starts with you. Your emotional safety starts with you. I just want to end with that. All right, so that is the episode on how to feel your feelings. We talked about why it is imperative to feel your feelings and the consequences of bottling it up, and the benefits of learning how to use your emotions as information to yourself and to your life. We talked about how to feel our feelings with the essential component of emotions being normal, natural, and not harmful. There's nothing wrong with you for having emotions. We talked about getting grounded, asking yourself how you're feeling, sitting with it, non judgment. We talked about getting curious and then expressing our emotions, releasing our emotions, letting it out slowly. We talked about emotional safety and how that starts with you. Okay. So, my homework for you guys is, when you are feeling your feelings next, I want you to be so compassionate with yourself. I want you to be extra non judgmental. I want you to be rooting for yourself like your best friend would be rooting for you. And know that that is how you can talk to yourself all of the time. Okay? So I send you so much light and love. Good luck with everything. Good luck with feeling your feelings. I am so proud of you for listening to the episode this far through, because that means that you are that dedicated to yourself. And that is awesome. Thank you, everyone who's listened to You Are the Healer. It literally lights up my world. I would super appreciate it if you could like the podcast, if you could share it, if you could subscribe. Send it to as many people as you can, honestly. If you think that there's people that desperately need to feel their feelings, please send them this message. I am so like fired up about this podcast because this message to me matters more than anything else. And any effort that you guys take in spreading You Are the Healer impacts the collective. People will learn how to better themselves. They'll learn about their mental health. They'll learn how to be the best version of themselves. They'll do better. They'll tell other people. It's like this endless cycle of healing, which I think this world needs so much of. So, thank you so much for listening. You can support me in the links below. And until next time, may you be well.